Yeah, I mean, it was everything. It was all my medication that I take for this. I mean, the point being is that there's a procedural due process. I'm accorded a process that's a right of a soldier, and they did not do it correctly. And then when I told them about it, they didn't fix it. I told everybody that they missed this right when it happened, and none of them said, "Okay, let's go back and do it again."
Okay, but my question is, when you spoke to Mr. said that he was going to submit an appeal for you, for which condition was he submitting the appeal? Because I see his memo that he submitted an appeal for depressive disorder and fatigue. Did you want another conditions of fair retention standard at that time, and did you discuss that with him? Because what I'm concerned about is that you might say that they're missing your medical records and they didn't make a decision based on their review, that the fact that they didn't review your medical records, but I'm trying to figure out which condition you wanted Mr. Appeal for you. Regardless, I do understand that the process, is supposed to be for accuracy and completeness, and that they should review entire medical records. But if you aren't contesting the finding on a particular condition, then it's not as important. I do understand that the process, is supposed to be for accuracy and completeness, and that they should review entire medical records. But if you aren't contesting the finding on a particular condition, then it's not as important. I'm just saying that if you are contesting, for example, were you wanting your IBS to fail retention standards, and they were making a reference to the fact that you weren't on medication for that condition, and you were, and that's what you wanted to fail retention standards? Because in the appeal, I only see depressive disorder and fatigue. If you have changed your mind, that's a different story. I just want to get the background on that.
Look at paragraph 3.
Paragraph 3 of what?
Of the appeal memo.
What is your issue with this paragraph?
It says, also request that the diagnosis of depressive disorder be changed to PTSD.
That's in paragraph 2.
It's, yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to, if you can, again, try and articulate to me what your issue is, I can try and see if I can help you or resolve this.
Well, first of all, do you think my issue is, one, they made a huge mistake. If you look at the document that I sent you, that's the MEB review, it does basically the investigator's job for you. All you have to do is read a 3-page document and you'll see all the mistakes they made. I was a medic for 10 years, so I put that together after review of the MEB merge, which is a 200-page document. I went line by line and found every bit of evidence that supports my case, and then I annotated it on that paper, and then I put where you can find it in the MEB merge. Further, aside from them being negligent and not finding all of those evidences, they also didn't see an instance where the VA psychologist said that I might have an undiagnosed TBI. They also, made the decision the first time without an entire year of medical records, which I supplied them. And then when I told them about it, they said it wouldn't have changed anything, and that's not the point. I'm accorded due process, and they screwed me out of it.
Okay, so did your Pablo search rectify the situation and ensure that those records have been uploaded? Because we don't control that.
Yep.
So the merge file and any of those documents, we have access to certain records, but we don't control that. So do you know Surgeon Steiner has rectified that situation and made sure that those records were available for review?
She did.
Okay.
But she did it after the fact, and I lost 50% of my due process because they didn't go back and start over.
Okay.
So I only had my real review upon appeal.
I'll go and look at whatever records that she had. Now, did it explain to you is the examination of record?
I already knew that.
Okay. Well, there are times where the VA diagnosis may not match up with prior diagnosis that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, if that's the case, though, the VA CMP exam is the examination of record, and they're going to defer to that diagnosis.
Okay.
So when you're asking for PTSD to be found instead of depressive disorder, they can look at other documents, but again, they're going to defer to the diagnosis unless there's something else. They're going to defer to the diagnosis of the VA CMP examiner. Now, I will say this, and I'm not sure if I've explained this to you or not. Whether it's PTSD or something else, I mean, if you look under the VASTR B for behavioral health conditions, there are a number of different conditions that are rated based on occupational and social impairment. It does not, in the end, really matter what it's called. You would get one rating for it, and be, based on that. With the exception of eating disorders, they get their own rating schedule. So whether it's called other trauma-related disorder, anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, PTSD, they're going to look at your occupational and social impairment.
Right, and they ignored pretty much everything the nurse practitioner said. And like you said, that is the assessment of record. They only paid attention to the psychologist. Now, the nurse practitioner went through all of my medical records and made statements based on the review, stating all the things that I found that supported my case.
For the behavioral health condition or for other conditions?
For everything.
Okay, but again, the Army is focusing, so the VA CMP exam is part of this integrated process, but we're focusing on conditions that, the Army could potentially find unfit. So I'm going to go back to my original question. Did you ask him to argue that other conditions should be found unfit, or did you ask him to write an appeal with respect to the behavioral health condition? Because we need to try and focus what our...
Look,
I've had clients, want to argue or send an appeal for multiple conditions, and that's fine.
I understand that you get a bunch of soldiers and they come at you with a bunch of requests, but I actually did your work for you. I did all of this investigation and found all the facts and sent it to you in the MEB review, and I guess you didn't read it. Do you want to go over it right now, or do you want to continue to interrogate me like I don't have a case?
Well, in this process right now, I don't think you have any other recourse because you have been returned to duty. I can try and informally talk to the MEB providers. However, so your case is a MEB case, and it normally goes to our MEB Remote Operating Center. I think at the time that you went through was during a transition from the old staff to the new staff, with the new mobilization team, and your case was decided by the active duty component, MEB docs.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I'll just be honest with you, it's really hard on behavioral health. I mean, I have counseled hundreds of clients in the time that I've been here. I've counseled many combat armed soldiers who, have behavioral health conditions where they've claimed, a variety of things and have records and such, and it's very difficult. Unfortunately, we can write an appeal, and if it's not successful, then in your case, you've been returned to duty. In the other case, he had a condition that still failed retention status, so he was able to argue the behavioral health condition at the formal board. So I can attempt to talk to the MEB docs on the active duty side that looked at this, but to be honest with you, it's very difficult. I've been fighting an uphill battle for almost 2 years on behavioral health here. It's not due to the fault that we don't care, that we're not reading any records. It's just really tough here on the active duty side, and unfortunately, that's how your case was reviewed with the active duty MEB docs. But I would like to say that when you talk about the fact that you've missed work, I understand that you have a variety of other medical conditions that have caused you to miss work. Mm-hmm. Your commander statement doesn't delineate between behavioral health conditions that cause you to miss work and those other medical conditions. And I think that the conclusion that the doctors made with respect to your behavioral health condition was that, yes, he might have other conditions that caused him to miss work, but it's not the behavioral health condition, and therefore, it's not severely interfering with the performance of his duties. Because that's the focus of the process.
Well, how are they going to make that assessment unless they rely on my doctor and my boss, who both signed statements saying I missed 90 days of work in the last 2 years?
But did you miss 90 days of work because you had IBS symptoms and those types of things, or did you miss 90 days of work because you had panic attacks and behavioral health conditions or symptoms?
My psychologist stated that she diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder with somatoform. And that was attached in the appeal. I'd been seeing a psychologist every week for the last 8 months before this appeal was decided, and they ignored her statement.
I don't think that they ignored it, but they did not give it as great a weight as other things. So there's a difference there. I'm not defending the doctors, but to make a conclusion that they ignored it. Because, as you know, being a medical professional, people can have different medical opinions, correct?
Yeah. I've been diagnosed with PTSD 5 times in the last 4 years by 5 different providers. 2 VA, 2 Kaiser, and 1 volunteer. And how did the board ignore all of that?
Baffling sometimes, but
like I said,
don't think that there's anything that we can really do at this point because they did review it, they made a decision on it, and you got returned to duty. If you had a condition that failed retention standards other than the behavioral health condition, then you could go to a formal board and still argue the behavioral health. But because you were returned to duty, there are limitations as to what you can do right now.
So what is it?
It's like have an informal conversation with the MEB docs.
What is a National Guard soldier supposed to do when 95% of their medical records are civilian, and they bring those records to the VA and to the Army board, and they don't give them much weight?
I've had soldiers submit those records, and they are considered.
I'll send you what she said. It's pretty clear cut. And there's also 5 other instances in my medical records from other providers, and they did not see that. That's negligence, in my opinion. All this is arguable on the clinical findings, but what about the issue of they made the first decision without all the records, and when I told them, they didn't do anything about it?
So when did you prepare this MEB review? Before the appeal or after the appeal?
I did this after my case was entirely sent back to my state. And I did it based on the MEB merge document that they created. I didn't even make it.
Okay.
So this VA psychologist, she didn't even assess me for PTSD. She gave me a simple PTSD questionnaire. I answered 4 of 5 questions yes. And then she goes out of her way to make a statement about how she doesn't feel like I fit the criteria. And the board put weight on that one single statement saying she doesn't feel like I meet the criteria, but there's no clinical evidence to support that.
About the CMP exam, when the DOD and VA got together and decided they were going to integrate the process,
I understand that, but the point being, they put a whole bunch of weight on a single statement that is not actually a definitive statement. It's a reservation statement.
There isn't much I can do for you right now, like I said, other than try and have an informal conversation with the doctors.
What about the procedural error that they made? Is there anything we can do there?
Not really, but like I said, there's no formal process. You had an appeal process which they responded to. Like I said, I can try and have an informal conversation to discuss this basically offline, but there's no you're not entitled to an extra review or anything like that.
It's not an extra review. It's my actual due process review that they did not do correctly.
Tell me what you want me to do.
I want to either, you can give the MEB a chance to fix it themselves, or look, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to make waves until this is fixed. And I'm going to go higher and higher until it is.
And that's your absolute right to do.
Well, it's my absolute right, but it's also absolutely backed up by facts, not by conjecture. So you can help me, or I can go somewhere else. And what I want to do is tell the MEB that they messed up procedurally, and they need to do it over again. And not only did they mess up procedurally, they messed up in a very negligent way. And I have the documents. It's all right there for you. And it's in the documents they created, not me.
I have just told you what I have offered to do for you. If that's not satisfactory to you, then I recommend that you pursue the other options.
So are you my counsel?
I am a counsel, but
Okay.
I can't write. There's nothing in the process that allows for me to just submit something else right now because you've been returned to duty. There's nothing else for consideration right now. The best thing that I can offer you is to try and resolve this informally to get them to fix this. But I can't just submit something; it's not going to go anywhere.
You can't say, hey, look, the soldier supplied all the documents you requested, and you made your initial finding without all of them.
It's essentially been closed, Sergeant Kirk. I mean, there's nothing that I can do really to reopen it.
My case was handled with negligence, though, and I think that's a legitimate reason to start over again. That's all I'm saying.
I don't control that process, though. So
Isn't there an avenue of legal appeal saying, look, someone did the wrong procedural step, or they missed a step, you guys should just do this the right way and start. There's no way for us to tell them they made a procedural error, is what you're saying.
Not in a formal process, no. Because you got returned to duty. Your case was January 22nd. January 25th, your appeal was...
That's my point. I guess it shouldn't matter what the outcome of the MEB was. Let's say that they did my MEB, found me unfit, but gave me a 30% rating when I was actually due maybe a 50% rating because they missed all the records. That's a procedural error. Is there a possibility to tell them that they did this? That's my question.
There is a possibility to tell them that they did this, but not in a formal way. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Your case has basically been closed as of basically the end of January. So it's now March 4th, 5 weeks later.
That's right, and I had to do all of my due diligence to make my case, and that takes time. And this is what my appeal should have looked like. This MEB review should have been my appeal, and instead I got a one-page memo and some extra documents that I supplied. I could have wrote that memo myself.
Okay.
I mean, are you guys overloaded with cases or what?
Well, we are short-staffed, but that doesn't have a bearing on the particulars of your case and how that played out. I mean, I read the appeal response, and what they're focusing in on is how does this condition, they're not saying you don't have this condition, but how does this condition impact your ability to do your job? And when you talk about missing work, there isn't a lot of evidence that says that you've missed work due to your behavioral health condition. And I'm looking at one memo and it says he missed 90 days of work, but doesn't even go into what conditions those were.
Okay, the CMP examiner If you look at my MEB review, note 8, which is on page 2, and I'll allow you to read that. I don't want to read it to you and insult your intelligence. So.
Okay, I read note 8.
Mm-hmm.
But the doctors, I can tell you, I mean, I've been doing this for a while. I'll give you a little bit of background about me so that you know that I'm not just inexperienced and they just passed you off or whatever. I worked medical policy issues at the Pentagon. I worked with the director of the service line on the review of these regulations from a strategic level. I've been doing medical policy, for about 6 years now. So I understand that you may be a little bit frustrated with the process and you feel that some of these issues haven't been addressed. But when you're talking about it makes no allowance for cases involving multi-system ailments acting in concert, you still have to, there still has to be some connection. Like, when you wrote that, I don't even see any reference to your behavioral health in there.
Yeah, but whenever you look at my case with my psychologist's diagnosis of PTSD and somatoform, that's the key piece that ties every one of these together. Somatoform and PTSD.
So basically all your other medical conditions are because of your PTSD?
Yeah, that's what
manifests itself in those conditions?
That's what my psychologist said. And that's actually what an Army psychologist diagnosed me with in 2010, which was in
How
my...
come you didn't going through, you've had these symptoms for a while. How come you didn't go through the board when you were with the WTU?
They put me on sertraline and my symptoms improved.
Okay. And then what's happened since then? Have they gotten worse?
Yeah, when I came home, I was feeling great. I was working out. I was in great physical condition. And then in 2011, I just started getting sick all the time. And I had to stop working out. My doctor diagnosed me with post-exertional fatigue syndrome. And that was before I even found out I had sleep apnea or IBS. So I was just exhausted, tired, no nutrients, nothing. And I missed 60 days of work in 2011. And then, obviously once I started taking probiotics, that helped a little bit better. When I got my CPAP, that helped better. When I got septoplasty, that helped. But even then, my sleep apnea never went away. And, I take trazodone to sleep at night. It helps a lot. But, I still wake up tired every day. And so, the doctors consistently have found, anxiety, depression, somatoform, and PTSD in my record. And it was in the documents that they created, yet they didn't see it. But aside from that point, my main contention is the procedural error.
And I proposed to talk to the doctors about this, but I was trying to be realistic with you. They're probably not going to change it.
So,
and then I said that you've had all of the other courses of action available to you.
Does anyone at the MEB there care about a procedural error that basically deprives a soldier of 50% of their due process? That's my question.
But the MEB ones aren't the ones that decided this. This went to the active duty side, so it's going to have to get opened back up with them.
Right. Someone should care. That's, at first do no harm, soldier care, all that stuff, right? Someone should care.
What she was going to do?
I told her. She went to this medical officer, and while I was on the phone, maybe about 5 minutes later, they came back and said it wouldn't have changed anything. Now, how do you review an entire year of medical records in 5 minutes? I don't know. Either way, even if they had looked at it and took in a couple of days and said it wouldn't have changed anything, that doesn't matter. that's a procedural error, and they need to fix it. They need to go back and do my thing again.
What if they come up with the same conclusion?
Hey, due process. But I didn't get my due process. And that's a legitimate argument.
Okay, I'm going to say this again. I can have a discussion with them, but there's nothing I can do to reopen your case. There's nothing being considered right now. So if you're not satisfied with that, then I recommend that you file a congressional or take it up with, other entities that can have success on this case. Unfortunately, we have limitations as to what we can do as MEB attorneys once they've gotten past a certain stage.
So, there's no appeal whatsoever at all for like a major error like that. Not one avenue for a soldier to say, whoa, guys. According to the regulations, you're supposed to do it this way, but you didn't, so we should try again.
I guess ABCMR.
Okay. And that was kind of where my ombudsman was going with this, that he said that I could talk to you and do an appeal to the PDA.
The case isn't before the PDA. It's basically been terminated. So you can't... I apologize if that's what your ombudsman said to you, but you can't really appeal the PDA.
Well, okay, so let's
give me a chance to go more thoroughly into your records. This is a 1,000-page document. I have not had a chance to look at 1,000 pages. I have looked at what's in my file. I will match it up with whatever else you may have submitted. And we can set up another time to talk in a couple days.
Okay. And I urge you with all of my heart to just take a look at the entire MEB review. It will make your job a lot easier because it's not conjecture, it's not my own opinion. I actually annotated where you can find all the evidence in the MEB merge.
Okay. But can I ask a question? When
Sure.
you got your results back on the 25th or on or about then, why did it take you another 5 weeks to come back and see what we could do?
Well, like I said, the 200-page document is quite a big document to go through line by line. I can see why some of you guys, not you as in the legal counsel, but some of the MEB people mess up sometimes because it must be monotonous. Further, I actually tried to go through my state surgeon to get resubmitted because that's what my Pueblo suggested. And so I was doing my due process back home and talking with over the next couple of weeks and trying to figure out what to do. And once I reached...
Sometimes when soldiers have civilian records, they aren't always sent. I don't necessarily say that it's negligence. If the records, they review the records that are before them. If they need to fix it so that they review all the records and ensure that, that process can be fixed. But before you start throwing the word negligence around and, those types of things, I'd just be a little bit cautious
because why?
You want to make a decision in your behalf when you're accusing them of negligence.
This is my life. I served for 12...
I understand that, and I'm trying to help you, but...
I served for 12 years. I went to war twice, Did a lot... I saw and did a lot of fucked up shit. And, I'm not going to let people get away with missing that. This is my life, my career.
And if there's an omission without an intent, sometimes things happen, and when you start throwing certain words around, it can muddy the waters a little bit. So I'm just trying to say that we're trying to help you.
Tell them to prove me right or prove me wrong, because I guarantee you I got a good case. I'm not an idiot. I was a medic for 10 years. I know what's what. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not accusing you personally of negligence. I'm saying the MEB review at Fort Carson is negligent.
That's a broad, sweeping generalization, though. If you go around telling everybody that MEB at Fort Carson is negligent, you know what I mean? It's just...
Why does it matter to you? Let's fix my case. You know what I mean? Let's do this.
So I've offered to review your case and come back with a recommendation. If you're not satisfied with that proposal right now, then, again, I recommend that you use your other channels.
So you're gonna review my case, and then we'll talk when. When do you want to talk?
Let me look at my calendar. Are you 1 hour behind or 2 hours?
1 hour?
Okay. You're in California?
Yes.
All right. Let's do 1:30 on Monday.
1:30 Monday.
So
Sounds,
that'll be, 1:30 your time.
sounds good. What was your name again?
1:30 your time.
1:30. Sounds good.
Are we good?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll talk to you on Monday, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Have a great week. Guys, this is the fucking bullshit we have to deal with. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a National Guardsman. All my records for the last 5 years are a mix between TRICARE, VA, and Kaiser. And so basically they told me that they don't value civilian providers much, so that's 1/3 of my medical records for the last 5 years that don't count in my case. And you heard her. I mean, it's just despicable. It's like, the procedural error, no one gives a flying F. No one says, oh my God, you're right, let's fix this. It's all about, the case is closed, it's too hard, can't put it back. It's just nonsense, Soldier care is soldier care. Even if I was a civilian and I was going through some sort of medical process, I mean, this is just messed up. But to do this to, a soldier, and it's not just me, there's a bunch of other people that are going through this, I guarantee you. It's not just one person. So, thanks a lot for it, Carson. Appreciate it.